Education for July 7th, 2021 to order. Would you all please join me if you're able and stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The first item on the agenda this evening is the election of officers, and we're going to start with the role of chairman of the Board of Education. So I would like to open the floor to nominations and remind board members that these do not require seconds. So I will open the floor.
You didn't arrange this in advance?
I was gonna say,
I'll nominate you, Bob.
I'm not here.
I nominate you.
Okay, so Bob Moore has been nominated. Are there any other nominations for chairman? Hearing none, I will close the nominations, and at this point, I will ask for a vote. All those in favor of Bob Moore being chairman?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? You can't oppose
Sorry,
yourself.
Bob.
Motion
Sorry,
passes
Bob.
unanimously. I'll now turn the meeting over to Bob.
The other officer we have to elect is the secretary. And Norm is our current secretary, but just came out of the hospital, so he's not here tonight. But if anybody would like to nominate a secretary.
I'll nominate Norm for secretary.
Any other nominations? If not, all in favor?
Aye. Sorry, Norm.
And the other officer is treasurer, and I did know that Christine Rachi has offered to continue to be treasurer if anybody wants. And she couldn't be here she'll be here for 5 minutes, but I guess she didn't make it.
I'll nominate Christine Garache for treasurer.
Any other nominations? None. All in favor of Christine?
Aye. This shows the great danger of missing a meeting.
It does. Again, we have election for 4 of us in November, so we will have to determine how we're going to continue to run elections, as Middlefield is on the May agenda, so Doug and I talked about it. We said probably we'll continue to have elections for the school year and not for the election year, and if somebody leaves, then we appoint somebody else. Next is the approval of the agenda. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any public comment here right now? If not, we have approval of the minutes of the Board of Ed, June 9th, 2021.
I move that.
Do I have a
Second.
second? Okay. Any comments? All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Next board meeting is August 11th, 2020 at 7 p.m. We now have a recognition of the Coggins-Shaw Regional High School baseball and softball state champions for Class S in the cafeteria. So we could all move, and for those watching at home, it won't be streamed live, but we are gonna record it, and we'll put it on YouTube later this evening, right? All right. So we're sorry you couldn't watch it
For
live.
those in the audience, you can join us, or you
to give us a little presentation. It's gonna be on the screen. They don't want to look at us when we're talking.
But why? That's public speaking.
An opportunity.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting us to present. I have a handful of now former students here to talk to you guys. I just want to give a brief introduction about sort of how we got here. So these were students in my honors geophysical science class, and our curriculum ends on a unit dealing with sustainability and talking about the damaging effects of single-use plastic in our environment. And it's kind of a heavy topic, and it's something that didn't really sit right with us to learn about this pressing issue and then to just take a test and say, bye, have a good summer, and pretend that this isn't real and happening now. And so the students had asked if we could try and do more and try and elicit more change. So I invited some of the administrators to come. They put together a plastics proposal. They've identified some areas in our district that could use some improvement, and they're here to offer some more sustainable alternatives. And then Dr. Shook was at that presentation that sort of acted as our culmination of our year. And that's when he invited us to present here to you guys. So I just also want to start by thanking you guys for coming and for giving up a day of your summer to be here. So I'll pass it off to you guys. Enjoy.
All right. Thank you so much for allowing us to present to you. It's very encouraging to have the Board of Education allow us to come and share our ideas with you. And we hope that you will take some of our ideas into consideration. So, plastic.
You tell us your name first.
Oh, right, okay. I'm Sophia. Yes. Plastic is wonderful because it is durable. We use plastic in everything, it has many uses, and life would be a lot harder without it. However, plastic is also horrible because it is durable. It stays around pretty much forever and keeps accumulating in our environment.
Our oceans sustain life. An abundant ocean can feed 1 billion people a healthy meal every day forever. But now they are being killed by throwaway plastics. The equivalent of 1 garbage truck of plastic is dumped in the sea every minute. 17.6 billion pounds every year. Plastic is everywhere in our ocean, floating on the surface, mixing in the salt water, and sitting on the ocean bottom, miles and miles deep. And once in the ocean, it never goes away. Over hundreds of years, it breaks down into small pieces. But those pieces, even the tiny ones called microplastics, are still plastic. Sea turtles are choking on it. Scientists say that over 60% of whale and dolphin species are affected by it. Zooplankton, the base of the ocean food chain, eat it. And so do we. It's in the water we drink. It's in our food. Microplastics have been found in our salt, our honey, and our beer. And sometimes even in the air we breathe. Companies are choosing to make something that will be used just once from a material that lasts forever. If you don't like what throwaway plastics are already doing to our world, brace yourself. We face a tsunami of throwaway plastic in our and the ocean's future. 4 times more plastic will be produced between now and the middle of the century than has been produced in all of history. 4 times more.
So what you're seeing is a culmination of our sustainability unit. And as Mrs. Callahan said, we were learning about all of these issues that are going on now, and we felt like it didn't feel right to just take a test, because let's be honest, we were probably going to forget about it in like a week. So as a class, we decided to do more research about our school and what's been going on, and create this presentation and share it with you all, and see if we can help this terrible issue that's happening. It is very important that we act fast, because by 2026, climate change could become irreversible. This means that just 2 years after we graduate, we will inherit a world where there's nothing we can do to save Earth and life on it. We will finally have the power to save ourselves, but we will have been too late. Our generation knows that something must be done, but we don't have the power to do it unless you, the generations who left this problem to us, listen to us. We make 400 million tons of plastic per year. Less than 10% of it is recycled. So even though recycling seems like a good excuse for using as much plastic as we want to, most of it still does not end up getting recycled and ends up affecting our precious environment. It takes plastic 500 years to break down. Plastic made today will be around for 17 generations. Every single piece of plastic that has ever been made is still here somewhere on Earth. So say that granola bar wrapper that you had yesterday at lunch, or that yogurt cup last month, or that red Solo cup 5 years ago at your birthday party. Your first diaper is still here somewhere on Earth. Plastic coats our environment and persists because of its durability. And it's very easy to think out of sight, out of mind, because we think the plastic doesn't affect us. But the waste we produce that ends up in our oceans comes back to us and does affect us, and can actually affect our health.
Thank you, Sophia. My name is Dia, and I will be talking about the health concerns. We are completely and utterly surrounded by microplastics, from the air we breathe, to the water we drink, to the food we eat. Scientists have found that 93% of Americans over the age of 6 have actually tested positive for BPA. BPA are essentially hormone disruptors that are linked to having breast cancer, early puberty, and even in some cases, infertility. Now, phthalates are a series of chemicals in a string-like formation that are made to make plastic more durable. The consequences of this? Well, this leads to hormone disruption and developmental and reproductive toxicity. Now let's talk about the plastic soup. What you see here are the 3 largest gyres across the globe. Gyres are essentially whirls or vortexes, and in this case, they are vortexes made from plastic. The North Atlantic Ocean has 930 billion pieces of plastic. The Indian Ocean, 1.3 trillion pieces of plastic. And finally, the North Pacific, having 2 trillion pieces of accumulated plastic. Now, what's happening here is that the plastic is actually sitting in the middle of the ocean. So the vortex is actually going around and around in circles in the middle of the ocean. So you can't see it from the top, and you certainly can't take it from the bottom. So this means that nonprofits, businesses, and even environmental aid can't pick up the plastic because it's in the middle. So they can't see it, therefore they don't know the exact location, and their equipment isn't equipped enough to handle this much plastic, so they can't take it out. So what we need to do is start from the source. Now let's talk about how plastic actually gets into the ocean. Well, the first step is that someone litters. You, a family member, anyone really. Or if they don't litter, then a plastic bag or a single piece of plastic will flow from a garbage truck into the ground. Then what happens is that the plastic will blow into a nearby sewage drain. From the sewage drain, it'll go into the nearby sewage pipes, where then it flows into our waterways. Now the 5th and final step, from the waterways, it flows directly into our ocean, where fish and birds will go and eat it. This leads to them choking, having entanglement issues, or even indigestion, eventually leading, sadly, to their death. Scientists have predicted that by the year 2050, there will be more plastic than fish by weight in the ocean. Now let's talk stats. 1.5 million pounds of plastic is made every single minute of every single day. 325 microplastic particles can be found in just a single liter water bottle. How many of those do we drink in a day, huh? 17 minutes is the average working life of a single-use plastic bag. Now, through these accumulated stats, I want you to ask yourself, why do we choose this?
Hi, I'm Jason, and I'm going to talk about something that we can improve here at our school that we can actually tangibly do. I'll talk about school materials, things that students and the faculty use. I'll talk about waste disposal, how we actually get rid of the plastic and trash that we have. And I'll talk about utensils and lunches, because food safety is something that plastic can really help for. Of course, this hasn't been a normal year. COVID and its regulations have really made us use a lot more plastic than we usually do. But that just means that we need to rebound even stronger, because this might be the only chance we get. So of course I'm going to be talking about the materials, and the first big waste of plastic that we use in our school is student ID cards. Because they're given to every single student in every single school every single year. Why use this much plastic for something that can be replaced with, say, an ID card? Or not an ID card, sorry, a QR code. So why not use a QR code? They're cheap, they're simple, you can just go to a website and create them in bulk. It's a nice plastic-free way to move away from what we've been using and more embrace the technology that's here and use it in order to save our planet. And next is plastic gloves, because this is really important in food safety and preparing food, We use a lot of plastic gloves, and they're only used once and then they're thrown out. And there are other alternatives. There are compostable plastic gloves. They're on Amazon. They're cheaper than the gloves that we use right now. So it's really a no-brainer. Why don't we just use these gloves? But that brings up a question. How do we know to compost these gloves instead of just throwing them out? Well, we need to talk about how we dispose waste in our school.
Hello, I'm Carter, and I'm going to talk about our waste disposal here at CRHS. In our cafeteria, we have a total of 6 large garbage bins, but only 1 small recycling bin. And keep in mind that all of these bins are made of plastic and lined with a plastic bag. So we ran an experiment. We decided to put a singular Post-it note at the bottom of a small garbage bin and to see if the custodians came in and changed it when there really wasn't anything in there. Now they did. And the custodians do their job, and they do it very well, almost a little bit too well, because we do not need to waste this many plastic bags. This year alone, we used over 21,000 single-use plastic bags. So this right here is 1,000 dots. Now try and imagine that each one of these dots represents a singular plastic bag. Now this is 5,000 dots. Each one of these represents a singular plastic bag. Now if we multiply that with 4 and then add more, that's about how much we use this year. Now we are part of this problem. Most landfills are located in low-income areas along with minority group areas. This is due to the fact that people that have enough money to move away from all the garbage. And this leaves all those properties that people with more money have moved away from for low-income or minority groups to move into. This image right here depicts the wave of garbage that we inflict or give these people. Now, what can we do to change? So, solutions. We can change the trash less often, obviously, and then we can also add more recycling bins and less trash cans. Garbage bins are closer than recycling bins on average throughout the school. And we're human beings. We're lazy. I'm not going to get up and go on an entire adventure all across the school just to throw away a singular piece of paper in a small recycling can when there's a large garbage can that's 2 feet away from me. We need to make a cultural shift.
Hi, I'm Claire. I'm going to be talking about the utensils that we use during lunches, which is a huge, I guess, source of where we use a lot of our plastics in the school. So during the school year, we buy 1,000 packs of spoons, forks, and knives individually, and each of them cost about $38. But they're all alternatives that we can use that are about the same price. So this is a 1,000 pack of completely compostable birchwood forks on Amazon for $40, which is only 2 more than what we use this year. There are also other alternatives like sporks. So again, it's the same thing. It's birchwood, and they're totally compostable, 1,000 pack. And these are $44.21, so it might seem more expensive, but because you're using a spoon and a fork in the same utensil, you're actually cutting the cost almost completely in half. Another huge issue that the school faces is with plastic water bottles. Oh dear.
Then there's the shortage of electrons.
Thank you. Sorry, guys.
Ironically, it looks like a power icon.
Okay, moving on. So
By the way, the case for that charger is made out of plastic.
It is, you're right.
Oh dear. That's not good. Okay. So another huge problem that the school faces with single-use plastics is with water bottles. During lunch, there's a large refrigerator in the cafeteria that supplies students with small plastic water bottles that are single-use and will most likely be thrown away rather than recycled. An alternative to using these is to have the school offer paper cups, which are, again, recyclable or compostable depending on what type you buy. And if we bought these and then gave them out to students, then kids could just grab one, go refill it, or fill it at one of the water refilling stations, and then we wouldn't have to worry about all the waste produced by the plastic water bottles. So obviously I've mentioned composting a lot, and if we were to use these alternatives, then we would need to shift the school over more to a composting culture. By doing this, we would have to implement more like bins as organizational tools. So this is what another school did. As you can see, the lids have small infographics on them as to what sort of food waste would go into each bin after lunch. And it's good, like, educational tool, and it would mean that the school wouldn't have to give a bunch of education on their free time on where things need to go, and there wouldn't be as many mistakes as far as what students put where they put them. So there's also more educational resources. So this is a YouTube channel called Where Does It Go? And they're just like short, about 10-second clips that focus on one product that could be produced at school lunches, and it tells you like whether you should compost it, recycle it, or throw it away. This video, or these videos, could be shown at an assembly before the next school year, or they could be shown at homeroom or during advisory, and it wouldn't take any time at all. This is Mrs. Bowman's composting bin. She has it at the school, and she uses the soil that is produced by it for the school small garden. Now, should the entire school transition to a composting culture, we would obviously need more than one bin, and the amount of soil that would be produced would be way too much for just the small garden that we have, but there are other ways that we could implement what we're doing to help the community. So Durham is obviously a huge agricultural town, and having the compost that we're making. If we even just had small farms come pick up the food waste that is produced by the school, they could use that food waste, make soil for their farms, and we would not only be benefiting the environment, but also our town.
Can you hear me? Yes. Okay. I'm Tiana, and I want to start by saying what we're asking may seem like a lot, and it can even be overwhelming. Trust me, we know, but it doesn't have to be if we start small. The small changes we make now will gradually lead to larger changes that can actually make big differences. And progress takes time, so taking it step by step is completely okay. No matter the changes we make, big or small, sustainability should be our top priority. Like Claire said, Durham relies heavily on agriculture, therefore relies heavily on the environment. As Cowtown, we rely on a healthy environment for our local markets, as well as a profit and commercialization of the fair. The fair provides support and opportunities for our town and its citizens. For example, local businesses make a total of about $200,000 just because of the fair. In addition, the fair donates a total of $200,000 to public services in the community and scholarships. When we did not have the fair in 2020, we were only able to donate $26,750. So you can see that without the fair, much of these donations and opportunities are taken away. If we don't protect the environment, we are failing to provide support that our local businesses and students need to succeed. Therefore, this issue is all of our responsibility. Now, we know it's hard to be fully convinced about something that will cost money. It's very easy to get caught up in what the cheapest option is as opposed to what the responsible option is. But we believe that the problems we have presented to you are important, and we hope you do too. And the options we have presented to you are responsible ones that will not only benefit the students and staff at our school, but the entire community as well. And again, we don't have to jump in with these big, huge, expensive changes. We can start small, then move forward from there. We also propose setting up a booth at the Durham Fair for fundraising or donations to help offset any costs associated with acting more sustainably. And the positive PR from being a sustainable school could draw more environmentally conscious people to enroll their kids here in an era of declining enrollment. In elementary school, we were brought up being taught about the importance of responsibility, and it was even named a core ethical value, meaning that responsibility is something that should be centralized throughout our whole entire lives. And even though we're in high school now and you're adults and we're not learning about responsibility on a daily basis, it doesn't mean that we should just forget about it. Just because we're not learning about multiplication facts in class anymore every day doesn't mean that they're not important. You know, we still have to incorporate it throughout our lives. And we can't be taught so intensely about responsibility and then be expected to ignore a problem that so clearly needs our help. By not taking action on such a prominent issue, you are avoiding responsibility, a value that us students have been taught to prioritize our whole lives. Furthermore, the CRHS mission statement itself states, we expect our students to thrive in and improve upon the local and global communities. The concerns and alternatives we have presented to you are our way of trying to improve upon the local and global communities, because plastic pollution is a local and global issue. Now, we don't make the rules and we don't have the power to shift how our school functions, but you do. You have the power to listen to our concerns and help us to make the differences that the mission statement itself says we should be making. And that's why we're here, to ask you, will you help us?
Thank you so much. Do we have any questions from the board?
I just want to say it's pretty amazing that you guys are, well, now sophomores, but to get up, you all spoke very well and not nervous. I know a lot of people in Paper House, so I think some of that might have helped. But I thank you guys for coming and being so passionate about what you've learned.
Thank you for listening. Thank you for
Thank you. If the board takes action in the future, would you guys willing to work on it as our representatives?
Definitely. Yes.
So if we put together a little committee, you can assure that you'll be on it, all right?
Bob is a natural chairman.
Yeah.
If anybody interested in anything, he makes a committee.
I saw you raise your hand when you said that.
Yeah. Thank you. I think, Kim and Doug, you brought him here for a purpose, because it's incredible to watch students. It's a very special night to see what you can do as freshmen in our school system, and know that, you've had, it's just amazing to watch all of you talk and speak, and so be passionate about something that you've learned in school. And some probably credit goes to Mrs. Callahan. But I think there are lots of teachers that helped along the way, and I really appreciate all your work, and we won't see the last of you. But thank you very much for your presentation tonight. And you don't have to stay for the rest of the meeting.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thank the parents, the wonderful children.
Thank you.
It's really impressive group of freshmen.
They probably call themselves sophomores now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They do that as well.
It is after July 1st.
Yeah. Well, the next item, it's hard to follow these two things. The next item is, we have to set the date for the district meeting. We also have to do it with actual resolution, and so we were talking about having a district meeting on the Lyman School resolution for the regional plan amendment. And I was suggesting, August 11th, which is the next board meeting. We could do it before or after the board meeting, probably before the board meeting on that evening. And then after the district meeting or public hearing, it's the same thing. We would then have to take a vote on the final language for the resolution for adoption in November and set the date for the hearing for the referendum date. So there's two steps. One is to have the district meeting public hearing on the regional plan amendment for the closure of Lyman School. The second step then is to, after the public hearing, is to then set the date for the referendum on that issue if we have no changes. And then that has to be filed with the town clerks by September 2nd to get on the ballot for November 3rd in both towns.
What is the date that we can't spend money after?
The date that we set the
So like
the date
August 11th?
Yes, if we vote that night to set the date for the referendum, that will be the end of our expenditures.
And I
Yeah,
haven't
because-
heard, like, I haven't seen anything more than what we've gotten privately from that person that we hired.
Right, it's coming out, Monday we have a bunch of meetings, and then the documents will start coming out at that time. So it'll be lead up to the public hearing.
So about a month, a little less
About
than a month.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm just wondering if you have the public hearing before the Board of Ed meeting. Our Board of Ed meetings usually start at 7, so if you started the public hearing around 6, that's only giving the public about an hour. I'm not sure.
Well, we could start it at 7 o'clock. I don't.
Yeah, I'm
we
not
can
sure.
have
I just
a-
wanna make sure there's enough time so that
Yeah.
everyone has an opportunity to speak.
Yeah, and we would have to run the hearing as long as there are people there to speak, so.
Okay.
We would.
Yep.
We would.
Even if we have to
Yeah.
move our Board of Ed.
Right, we could start the Board of Ed 6 and then reconvene after the public hearing. There was another way to do it. So we could set the hearing at 7, because 6 is pretty easy, early to have a
Right.
public hearing.
Right.
But if we set it at 7, have a Board of Ed at 6 or 6:30, recess for the district meeting like we do with the budget district meeting, and then come back afterwards. It's all over, right? If we would. If not, we can have another meeting between there and September 2nd.
So September 2nd is the cutoff.
Right.
Cause I'm just thinking like summer like I'm away that week, so I won't be here, but I'm just thinking like summer vacations and how, like what type of like, how many people are actually gonna show up.
Yeah.
But if we have to be done by September 2nd, I guess there's not really an option.
I mean, we could move it later, but there's not a lot of time
Right.
later either. We have school, we'll be starting and stuff like that.
As
But
Bob
generally,
has pointed-
public hearings accept written
Yeah, we
correspondence,
can-
so
we can-
if someone is not able to come,
Sure.
you know, and they know they're not gonna be able to come, they can certainly put something in writing.
And we can hold the hearing open for a few days, because we don't really
Okay,
have
that's-
to
yeah,
act
that's
on
true.
the next resolution until right before September 2nd. So we could hold off taking final action. Let's say there was really good comments about really a change, and the board decided to make a change in the resolution language, or the regionalization plan language, then we could do that and come back for another quick board meeting on that one issue.
It's probably best not to set the date, the day of the public hearing, only because if there are issues that are raised during the public hearing
Right.
that we feel it's important for us to address,
Yeah.
we wanna have the means and the time to properly address those.
Right, and we would have about 2 weeks to figure that out after the public hearing. So we could, meet like this into, August 31st or something like that, or whenever the time allows to make the final resolution and get it to the town clerks. So if you wanna, okay with a district meeting on that, we have a resolution that has to be adopted in order to do that. I'd be happy to read it, unless somebody else would like to read it. Maybe Missy has a great voice.
I'll read it if you have, Meg sent it today, I honestly didn't look at it.
So where it says insert date, it's August 11th,
Okay.
and at 7 p.m.
Are you trying to say I have a loud mouth?
No, it just,
I grew up in an Italian family.
I don't.
If you didn't speak loud, you didn't get answers. All right, so I start at the top?
Yes.
Okay. Regional School District 13, Towns of Durham and Middlefield. Resolution to call a special district meeting to present a proposed amendment to the plan of regionalization for the district. Be it resolved that pursuant, is that how you say that?
Yep.
To section 10-47C of the Connecticut General Statutes of the Regional School District 13 Board of Education hereby calls a special district meeting to be held on August 11th, 2021 for the purpose of holding a public hearing to present and receive public comment on a proposed amendment to the plan of regionalization for Regional School District 13. Further resolved that the attached warning of special district meeting is hereby approved. Regional School District 13 warning of special district meeting, August 11th, 2021, 7 p.m. The electors of the towns of Durham and Middlefield, Connecticut are hereby warned and notified that a special district meeting will be held at the Coggins Regional High School Auditorium, 135 Pickett Lane, Durham, Connecticut, on August 11th, 2021, at 7 p.m. for the following purposes. Item 1, to choose a moderator for said meeting. Item 2, to hold a public hearing to present and receive public comment on a proposed amendment to the plan of regionalization for Regional School District 13. A copy of the report on the proposed amendment to the plan of regionalization is on file and available for inspection at the Office of the Town Clerk of Durham, the Office of the Town Clerk of Middlefield, and on the district's website at www.rsd13ct.org. Following the special district meeting, the District Board of Education is expected to set the date for a referendum vote in Durham and Middlefield for approval or disapproval of the proposed amendment to the plan of regionalization, dated at Durham, Connecticut, the 7th day of July, 2021. Regional School District 13 Board of Education, Robert Moore, Chairman.
We have a motion to adopt that resolution.
So moved.
Second.
Any comments? If not, all in favor? Say
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is communications. I don't really have much. Just had a good 4th of July. We had a great graduation. For those who were able to attend graduation, it was probably the most beautiful night of the year. And it was a great outside graduation once again. We had a really good time, and the speakers were short and good. So, any other communication?
I did receive a text message over the weekend where someone said, hey, look, all the pickleball courts are completely filled.
Yeah.
So.
Is there in the club yet?
Is that where you tore your calf muscle?
It is.
That is, yeah.
This is
Charging you
Memorial-
that. Thank you for that.
Totally worth it.
No, there's several different groups that, basically have self-organized and go there quite frequently. And there's always a lot of activity on that, the basketball court, and I see people using the tennis ball court all the time. I know that we just recently removed the trees behind the courts to keep the pine needles off of the courts. I thought we were just gonna trim them back, but I guess we trimmed them down. Yeah, but they are getting a lot of use and a lot of
That's great.
favorable comments.
Okay, I move into attaboy for
Pursuing that.
watching
No, we had a committee
The
with.
recreation committee did a great job.
Yeah.
I do
Yeah.
remember you, however, as being the bulldog of this effort. So you deserve recognition
Well,
for that, I think.
no, I think we had a great committee with a lot of input from the administration, from teachers, parents, the board members. Missy was, we divided and conquered. So we got the playgrounds at Lyman done, the playgrounds at Memorial done, we got the courts done. It really came together, but it was the support of this board and Middlefield's Board of Finance as well that helped us put it over the top. So
Great.
thanks to everyone. Good community effort.
Okay, I'll try to be more brief tonight than I've been in previous meetings. The first thing is, I want to thank you all through your agenda tonight for allowing us to make this meeting more than the 5 to 10 minute meeting. I understand it traditionally is, and appreciate, I think that you all also appreciate the significance of what our athletic teams achieved this spring, which we celebrated earlier, and with the plastics, it's a little bit impulsive on my part, but I got, Lindsay invited me to the presentation in the class, and I really just felt like it was something that you all would want to hear for some of the reasons that Bob stated. One, because the issue itself is a very relevant issue, and I learned a lot from them. I think that's an important thing to recognize, that we can all learn from each other, including the young people, the learners, but also their passion for wanting to do something about it, and that they came up with some really practical solutions. So we will keep an eye on that, and I encourage them to stay active and not limit their activism with one presentation to a superintendent or a principal or to a board, and their administrators and their teacher also gave them suggestions about how they could not just work within the district, but even within the community to maybe further some of those efforts. The second thing I want to mention is, and I guess it could have come under communication, but maybe most of this has come to me, not to you all, which is unusual. Usually it's the other way around. But a number of folks have reached out, probably in the last 3 to 4 weeks, and I know this is true of colleague superintendents, really kind of asking us what our position is going to be with health and safety protocols to start school in the fall. And most of it is focused on face coverings and masks. And so You know, what I will share with you all is what I've shared with them, sometimes through phone calls and sometimes through emails. And that is, we're currently under an executive order that says for, you know, things like summer school and it covered the end of the school year too, that face coverings were required in schools. And that is due to expire on the 17th. So we're not too far from then. And we haven't been given any direction from the state about whether or not that is going to continue or not. I will share, not one person has reached out to me and asked us to continue the mask mandate. Okay? Everyone I've heard from has said to please discontinue it. And so my message, whether you agree with it or not, that I've given them is, number one, we are waiting for state guidance. And if there's a state mandate, we're gonna follow it. We may not like it. We didn't like a lot of what we did last year, but you know, if you all want to push us in a different direction, you're the board. Obviously, we will listen to that and try to rectify that. But so we're hoping that we don't have the mandate, which means it would probably be a local decision. And if it's a local decision, my personal position, I talked to some of the admin staff today, and I think we're all on the same page, is that, you know, we are a school system and we need to be cognizant of what we're doing in schools, but we're also part of a community and part of a world. And I think it's going to be increasingly difficult if our COVID case counts stay low and our vaccination rates climb, even slowly, to say to our children and to our employees and to our families, you can go to Walmart and just about everywhere else, and I'm not picking on Walmart, anywhere else in the state or in the country, really. And the message is, if you've been vaccinated, you don't have to wear a face covering. If you haven't been, or if you're uncomfortable, you can. And we shift the onus of enforcement from the district as the entity to the individual families and children and employees. So that's my official position as of today, and I wanted you all to know that because we don't meet again for another month, and we hope we're going to get some guidance from the state here in the next week or two. So, I mean, Jen, do you want to say anything more about that?
Nope, we're just waiting on the guidance.
Yeah,
And,
yeah. Do you all have any questions about that? I mean, I know families want to know what is the answer.
Yeah.
We don't have it today, so.
We want to
Yeah.
know the answer too.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, but that's our position as of now, and I think, again, families will have to make individual decisions. The other thing that is married to that, again, whether you agree with it or not, because some people don't, is I've encouraged everyone I've talked to encourage everyone they know who hasn't been vaccinated to get vaccinated, because my belief is that not just our children who are of age to be eligible or our adults in the school system, but just everyone in our community who will take the opportunity to get vaccinated decreases the likelihood of any type of outbreak or quarantining or serious illness to anyone involved inside or outside of the school. So that's it.
You want about the policy that may need for.
Oh, yeah, were you gonna mention that? Yeah, Kim's
Alright.
gonna mention that in her report.
Alright.
Thank you, Bob.
Thanks, Doug. Anybody questions? Kim?
Okay, so as we closed out the June 30 fiscal year, we are looking at our general fund at being 99.94% expended. Having said that, though, a lot of that is due to the fact that we have overexpended some line items and underexpended others. Primarily due to COVID, but not entirely due to COVID. We did have some budgeting strategies in terms of our salaries that left us a little underexpended, but we were able to offset that with underexpended accounts. We did have some things like an insurance rebate from the insurance company for limited COVID accessibility. We also had an Eversource incentive for that energy project that I've been talking about for 2 years that is almost complete. And we did get a $574,000 incentive from Eversource. So that came in exactly as we had hoped, actually a little higher. We've had some success in our outplacements due to the alternative education program that we implemented at the high school this year. So we have certainly seen some savings for that. And then obviously the COVID things, the travel is down. district-wide, supplies were down, dues and fees were down. You know, so that was able to make up for where we overexpended in salaries. And these salaries were overexpended due to the 95% vacancy factor, simply that, nothing else. We had been able to do 98, 96 in the past. We got a little more aggressive with the 95 and didn't work out so well for us. So I moved back for this 21-22 year. But overall, we should end the year with roughly between $700,000 and $800,000 surplus, which is what I've been saying and hoping and estimating. And 400 of that, you know, was used to balance the budget for 21-22. So that leaves us in pretty good shape for the following year. So I'm happy to see that happen. We also had the coronavirus relief funds for $380,000, which really helped pay for all our PPE, helped pay for a lot of our substitutes that were COVID-related substitutes, so that saved in the general fund budget. They were not paying for the substitutes for sick days if they were COVID-related.
Excuse me, how much came in on that one for the
That
sports?
was $380,000.
It was 380. And with the new CARES Act, is there additional funding coming into the district?
There is, and that application is due in August, and we just had an ADCO meeting today with all the administrators of how the planned use would be, and the thought that we'd push that off to another year maybe. We have to 2024.
Yeah.
So we don't have a defined use at this time, but we are talking about that.
I think some of that can be used to offset some of the costs we incurred this past year.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Yes, it
so-
goes back to March, the official, March 15th, I think, was the
Yeah,
official date.
so some of that could go into the general fund without having necessarily to go, be expended on a new program or something like that, if we needed to do that.
It can. That's not the spirit of it, but it can. It
Yeah.
does allow that. MTA was 78% expended. MTA reimbursed the general fund for health insurance for the employees, and also helps balance our budget each year. I'm estimating a surplus at MTA of $229,000 this year. Again, a lot of underexpended accounts due to COVID, and we did come in a little bit under budget in our revenue, but we were able to make that up in our underexpended accounts. So more detail, more once the auditors are finished, then, you know, once we get the audit report, I'll go through a little bit more detail line by line. The auditors were out in early June for preliminary work. They're coming back in October, and then, you know how that goes, we'll have by December, have the report. The other item that Bob was mentioning was we had met with the bench warmers yesterday to discuss advertising on our athletic fields. And this is something that they've been interested in for a while. We just don't have a policy for it. So we're going to be looking, I've got someone in my office doing some research on different policies in different towns, our lawyers, kind of coming up with a process and a policy. So we'll be bringing that forward to the board members to review. I'm not sure if we do it at a policy committee or if we do it at a board meeting, but that's just something that, you know, will be up and coming if everyone is.
There are 2 or 3 specific policies within our district that we would have to handle through policy committee before it brought to the board, but I know there's 2 or 3 that I think of good interest in it. You know, it's for the public benefit. It's not just sports only. It's a broad-based thing.
Yeah, so, well, that's the thing that, you know, why a policy I've been pushing for, not pushing for, but really saying we can't do this until we have a policy is we need to be able to determine where that money gets spent. So if the bench warmers is doing this, they're gonna spend it on sports. So we need to be able to know how this is gonna move forward. So that's why I think a policy, maybe a policy allowing it and then a procedure, a different piece of.
It also affects the POPs organization and other, you know, support organizations out, you know, if they raise money, how do they donate it right to the program? In the past, we've had to put it into the general fund because we didn't have a way to do that. So this would allow us to, you know, for them to make donations right to the program area rather than going through our general fund, if they raise the money.
And the intent of this, the group that is interested in doing this is to supplement the sports programs with things that the budget doesn't include.
So, thanks, Kim. Any questions?
I have a question, I don't know if this is the right time to ask, but the stuff that Meg sent us, there was one extra FTE above what was budgeted, and it looked like it was for like a special education
Assistants, right,
Yeah.
yeah. 2 assistants, and I think something else was dropped. There was one thing that was dropped, and there were 2 assistants.
Right, but we were still
So they're
one
put in there. But we're up
FTE
one.
above what was budgeted, so I was just wondering
Staffing.
about that.
Was it another, I didn't do that. Was it another non-certified position? Maybe we just reclassified them.
I'm trying to remember what there were 2 additions that were added to the, special, education assistants. And then there was one that was eliminated from, and I can't remember.
Yeah, it's a net zero. It was probably just a
So,
reclassification.
well, it
No,
was
no
actually,
increase.
it came out to an increase of one
And it was
person.
removed from another area?
'Cause it
But
was-
it says like we budgeted for 298 and we're at 299.
I'll have to look. I didn't
Yeah,
prepare that
no, that's
report,
okay,
so-
but that's why I said I didn't know if it was the right time to ask, and I just had a chance to go through everything last night, so if you wanna just let us know, that would be fine.
If we can just send an email out with.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Cause I know like it was either last budget or the budget before, like we had only budgeted for 0.5 for his position, but it ended up being a 1, so it was always, every time that Meg sent us something, it was always 0.5 over, but we knew why. And this,
Okay,
yes,
fair enough.
that's
Yep.
fine, thank you.
Ken's thinking hard about
Yeah, there's a couple of shifts.
The wheels are turning, right,
Yeah,
Ken?
yeah.
It's
A couple
not
of
a
It's
big
shifts,
deal.
probably
but
an easy
yeah,
answer. I
yeah.
just don't know it
Yeah,
off the top.
that's fine.
Thanks, Ken. Thanks. Listen. The next is the teacher administrative evaluation flexibilities. Doug, you know, on the top of that?
I know a little bit about this. Corey knows more, but it's my understanding that there has been some flexibility due to COVID provided by the State Department of Education for the evaluation of certified staff, teachers, and administrators, and that these have been vetted by our PDEC committee, which is, I don't even know if that acronym is, Professional
Professional development.
and Evaluation Committee, perhaps.
Evaluation,
Anyway,
yeah.
the unions and everything, they've all blessed this basically, and essentially what we are recommending to you all is what the state is recommending to every district. I could spend hours giving you my commentary on this process in general and what its overall worth is to the profession, but putting that aside, we think in present circumstances, these flexibilities make sense coming off of the COVID year that we had, and we would ask you all to adopt them tonight so that when our teachers return in the fall, we can share this with them and they'll understand the process by which they'll be evaluated this year. And other staff want to add anything, or is that?
It's very similar to what we had done this past year.
Do we have a motion to accept the administrative evaluation?
So moved?
Second?
Second.
Any other comments on it?
Is this like an administrative policy that doesn't really need board approval? Like, I know the policies usually do, but the administrative procedures usually we review them, but don't necessarily have them.
Corey seemed to think it was a good idea to get this on the record, and I'm gonna admit, I don't know the state well enough to know what,
Yeah.
I don't think it hurts for you guys. to
No,
review
I'm
them.
fine with
Yeah.
doing it.
It might be overkill.
I just
yeah.
don't want it to set a precedent, because
Right.
there's times when we adopt policies, and then there's administrative procedures that support those policies.
Yeah.
And if we start having to vote and approve every single administrative policy, I think, we're now taking over the job of the superintendent and his folks. So that's why I'm not sure if this is actually falls into policy or administrative procedure, and it looks more like it's procedural, but
I feel like when, I would have to look back in the minutes, but when it got proposed for this past school year with COVID, I feel like we did the same thing, and I feel like we voted on it, but
You did.
I think
it
we
was,
did.
Yeah.
via Zoom, but we did.
Yeah.
So this is a chance for us to put things right.
yeah. No, I mean, I'm fine with voting and going forward. I just want to make sure that we don't
Right.
get into a habit of voting on administrative procedures. That really,
I'm with you there, yeah.
all right. I got your back, all right?
As I read it, it seemed to, give a little bit more flexibility, and when the evaluations should have been done to extend it. And that may be the only reason, because they didn't get the evaluation done at the right time frame.
Because they didn't follow the adopted procedures and policies. Okay, fine. I'm okay with moving the question.
We will bring it back if it's not necessary.
Did you just move it?
I did.
It did, it was
I'll
already
move the
moved.
question.
It was moved. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The other was the approve the Latin instruction materials. Again, sometimes we do these textbook changes, and this is more about purchasing of this material, I think, right? Not actually the quality of the material that's in there.
Is this included in what we budgeted for?
It's a textbook cost.
Then I move to approve the Latin instructional material.
I'll second that.
Well, thank you.
Part of this is due because the teachers move into the high school.
Correct.
And
Right.
bringing new stuff that we don't have here.
Sure.
And this is a play, it's not the like.
Yeah. We'll see. Any other comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. We have time for public comment. Thank you all for being here for so long. Any comment? Just state your name, please.
My name is Mike Sharon. I'm a Durham resident. I understand that you just shared your position on the masks, but I did come with the intention of speaking about the masking policy in public comment, and I'd like the opportunity to express my opinion on it. So I understand that the governor is attempting to extend the mask mandate in schools this upcoming week. As a concerned parent and public school teacher in another district, I ask the board not to enforce a mask mandate for this upcoming school year. If you do not feel that it's appropriate to challenge the governor's likely executive order, I ask that you at least come up with a contingency plan where there is clear language stating that masks will be optional for students in RSD13 in the event that the statewide mask mandate expires. As a public high school teacher this past year, I witnessed firsthand the detrimental effects that masks are having on our children. Based on my observations, students are simply not as happy as usual, in addition to lacking focus, enthusiasm, energy, interest, and emotion. As an educator who likes to use humor in the classroom and get students engaged, I found it especially difficult to get students to participate in class this past year, or to even get them to crack a smile underneath those masks. We made the best of it, and this was no fault of the kids at all, but what I feel was simply a consequence of masks that they've been forced to hide behind. Teachers across the state have witnessed a decline in student performance this past year, and I think the connection between that decline in performance and wearing a face covering for a 7-hour school day has been severely understated. As a parent with 2 young daughters in town, one entering 3rd grade in this district, I'm concerned about the impact that wearing a mask all day is having on my daughter's social development. When I think back on my education, those 1st grade through 3rd grade years are often some of my fondest memories. My daughter has had roughly 1.5 of those years taken from her by COVID, and I'm sincerely hoping she can at least get this year back. Students, especially those at the elementary level, need to see their teachers' faces and their classmates' faces. They need to learn how to read facial expressions for appropriate social development, which I feel if they don't learn now could have grave consequences later on in their lives. 1.5 years into this pandemic, the facts regarding COVID-19 and who is most at risk for serious complications from the virus are clearer now than ever. According to the CT.gov COVID tracker, there have been 21,552 total cases of COVID in the state amongst those under 10 years old. Of those 21,552 total cases, there has been 1 death, which obviously any death is unfortunate, but it has been 1 death. Of the 8,279 COVID-19 related deaths in Connecticut, once again, there has been 1 death under the age of 10. We also know that children are far more likely to have asymptomatic cases of COVID-19, meaning the 21,552 recorded case number is most likely far higher, which also means that the fatality rate for children under 10 is most likely far lower than 1 in 21,552. Taking a look at the 10 to 19 age group, we see that there have been over 41,000 total cases of COVID-19, which has resulted in a total of 3 deaths. Data I was able to find from the week ending May 22nd, a little outdated, but it's the most recent I could find, showed that there were 238 people hospitalized in Connecticut with COVID-19. Of those 238, 10 were under the age of 18. Despite the fact that by this point a large portion of the adult population was vaccinated and the under 18 age group was largely unvaccinated, the under 18 age group still made up only roughly 4% of total hospitalizations in the state, once again demonstrating that COVID-19 does not pose a significant danger to the K through 12th grade age group that it does for older populations. There's been some talk in the medical community about possible long-term effects of COVID-19 infection on children. They refer to this as long COVID. This would include symptoms that last longer than 120 days. Based on my research, some of these common symptoms would include tiredness or fatigue, difficulty thinking or concentrating, headaches, and dizziness upon standing, which I feel, based on my experience, are all symptoms that could easily be associated with wearing a mask for 7 days, 5 days a week, rather than the COVID-19 infection itself. I'm not sure about control groups in these particular studies. Based on the statistics that are out there, it is my opinion that the push to keep our children in masks is not really for the purpose of keeping them safe. If the vaccines work and the older population that has a much higher risk of developing serious complications related to COVID has had a chance to receive those vaccines, I feel there is not really a need to continue to sacrifice so many childhoods to protect the vulnerable population. The vaccines have proven so far, based on my research, to hold up well to variants such as the Delta variant, and there has been no evidence that I have seen so far that the Delta variant is any more dangerous to children. Thank you for letting me share my thoughts on this topic. I could go on, but in the interest of time and out of respect for all of you, I'm going to stop here. I really do hope that you will strongly consider doing what is in your power as a Board of Education to let our kids be kids and put a stop to potential social and emotional damage that masking has inflicted and may continue to affect. Thank you.
Any other comment?
Say, Doug.
Okay, can I move this mic? Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Good evening, Board of Education members and Superintendent Shook. My name is Rhonda Riggett-Stevens and I live in Durham. I also hold 6 Connecticut teaching certificates. I've had one child go through District 13, K through 12, and I have another one that is going to be a senior. Tonight, I would like to share with you my concerns regarding the mask mandate as a response to the transmission of COVID-19 virus currently in place that is set to expire on 7/20/21. I am going to be addressing the reasons we should never ever mask any of our children again in the future in District 13. The impact this masking has had on our children of all ages in the district has not only been physical but also psychological. When the pandemic started in 2019, both the Surgeon General of the United States, Jerome Adams, and Anthony Fauci stated, masks do not work at stopping viruses. Their message was clear. On March 8th, 2021, the CDC released a study that proved that masks do not stop the transmission of COVID. We all know that the flip-flopping has occurred on this position, but plainly, masks stop virus as well as a chain link fence stops a handful of sand flung at it. Still, mask mandates on our children have been in place despite the fact that no scientific data exists to prove masking our children stops the transmission of COVID or any virus for that matter. Still, knowing this information, Governor Lamont continued to keep the statewide in-school mask mandate in place for our children, and it continues to this day. Should the Governor's Executive Order 12A expire on 7/20/21, the power to decide whether or not to mask our children will fall on you as our Board of Education and Superintendent. The Connecticut State Department of Education, the Department of Public Health, and the may make recommendations, but this decision ultimately will fall on you and you alone. These agencies can only make recommendations, and it is your job and responsibility to protect our children with policy. Knowing what we know now about the inefficiency of masking to stop the spread of COVID-19, I urge you to never, ever mask our children again. We are telling you, as parents of District 13, to read the mask box. You do not need to be an epidemiologist to understand not for medical use, the phrase on the box. It means that masks never did and never will stop the spread of the COVID virus. It has been widely publicized that children are not, I repeat, are not super spreaders of COVID-19. We know that the average age of death of COVID in Connecticut is 79.5. That's right, 79.5. And just because if you don't know the facts, it doesn't mean they're not true. And all you need to do is to go to the ct.gov website. And as Mike already stated, our children, for the most part, any death, again, is a terrible tragedy, but it is not a threat for our children. But these mask mandates are depriving them literally of oxygen, recent studies have shown. They are causing anxiety and depression. The masks take away their identity and their individuality. Recently, a study produced by the University of Florida that was done on masks shows that kids wearing masks all day the masks are dangerously filled with harmful germs, including strep, tuberculosis, meningitis, sepsis, pneumonia, food poisoning, Lyme disease, diphtheria, Legionnaire's disease, just to name a few. In reality, the kids are crowded together all day long in the hallways, walking through Cog and Jog. They take their masks off at lunch, and then they put them back on to move through the hallways yet again that are crowded. What kind of theater is this, I have to ask myself. How many of you have worn a mask 5 days a week from 7:20 to 2:10? Honestly, like who has done that in this room? And we're asking our kids to do this. I bet no one has had to do this. Will you stand up for the kids of this town this year in the weekly superintendent and health representative meetings with Governor Lamont and his response team? That's what we're asking you. The teachers have the NEA to protect them and to advocate for them. Our children have no union. They only have you and they only have us. It is never morally or ethically right or just to sacrifice children for adults, which is what has occurred throughout this past year when the children were incorrectly categorized as super spreaders. I urge the Board of Education and Superintendent to stand up for our children going forward when the occasion arises. Take a stand, advocate for the children of District 13, and let them breathe with no masks. And finally, with regard to the superintendent's statement about the vaccines, I just want to make it clear that it's very important for all the staff and anybody else talking to our children about the vaccine that is an emergency use authorization only vaccine. There are no longitudinal studies. It usually takes 10 years to roll out a vaccine, and this has been rolled out in under a year. So when you talk to these kids about the vaccine and to the staff, make sure that you tell them about the dangers. They have the right to informed consent, and that they also have the right to refuse. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mike Stevens, live in Durham, my wife Rhonda. I'm not an educator, just a parent, concerned parent, because well, I don't think this is going to end. At some point, we're going to have a Delta, Gamma, Beta, whatever variant, and you guys are going to be asked to mask our kids again. This is not going to end. And we're also going to be asked to vaccinate all of our kids, and that's going to be another issue that we're going to have to deal with. But what I want to say is that society has never sacrificed the well-being of the children for the supposed well-being of older people. Most people will say they have unconditional love for their children. They say that they would die for their children. They sing songs about the children are our future, but what have we done? We've muzzled our kids with masks, even to this day. We think it's going to end, but it's not going to end. It's going to keep going on. We put them behind plastic bubbles, and I'm sure that in the not-too-distant future, we're going to require our kids to take a vaccine for which there is no known, with completely unknown side effects. And if we don't make them do that, we're probably going to not let them back in school. We're going to have to make them wear masks if they're not vaccinated. We know that masks aren't effective. Plastic shields are ineffective. Masks are useless as it's like trying to stop a swarm of bees with a chain link fence. They don't work. Plastic shields don't stop the exchange of airflow in a room, and it does not reduce infection rates. And for God's sake, there hasn't been a single documented case of transmission outside. And I saw little kids playing soccer a month ago with masks on at the soccer field. It's just nuts. And we've been asking our kids to wear masks outside for over a year. Not to mention that kids aren't victims of this disease. The death rate for the flu is greater than the death rate of COVID for people under 18. But what we have done is we've locked our kids up, we've canceled all their activities, and worst of all, we tell our kids that if they don't wear a mask, stay home, and stay in their literal bubble, then they are complicit in killing their grandmother and their grandfather. And you guys know this, right? But this has caused an epidemic of depression, visits to therapists and prescription medication for them to cope with the guilt we have heaped upon them is gone through the roof in the last year. You know, and some of you may agree with me, and you may say, well, we have to follow the mandates, right? I can't break the law. And that may be true, but what else have you done? Have you researched the impact to our kids? Do you know what they're going through? Have you sent them a survey to ask them how they're feeling in the past year? Do you know how many of them are depressed, suicidal, or on medication? Have you asked what rate of increase of depression or substance abuse has happened in the last year since all this has started? Have you brought this information to the attention of the authorities at the state level? Have you listened and analyzed this information? How have you responded? And did you act to allow our kids to thrive? To tell the state authorities that this is just not right? It's not right. Or do you just follow orders, and have you pushed back at all? You know, we elect you leaders, Board of Education and other political offices to be our leaders, not to just follow mandates from lawyers and state authorities. That's why we have a Board of Education. We don't want you to be feckless. We don't want you to roll over. We elected you to stand up for our kids. And all we're asking is that you do your job and advocate for our kids. Don't let them do this. Don't let them go through this again. You know, if you have done these things, if you are advocating for our kids, then thank you. And please join us in this fight. If it ever happens again, we have to fight together. So just don't let it happen again. And if you are advocates with us, please join us in this journey together. Thank you.
Any others?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Lindsay. I'm from Durham. It's an emotional topic, masks, for me currently. Before COVID, before masking, before everything that happened, I had a 11-year-old fifth grader, soon to be sixth grader, who was the most fun-loving, outgoing, empathetic, people-pleasing kid you could ever imagine. His teachers have said it. Every sport he's been with has said it about him. And he's a victim of this entire thing. Halfway through COVID, he started with, out of the blue, nowhere, massive obsessive compulsive disorder brought on by anxiety. This is a kid who worries about everybody and what everybody feels. He worries about his grandparents, he worries about his friends. But what this masking has done is it's made him worry every ounce of the day that he's wearing it. It's always on his mind. He worries about, if I'm wearing it, there's a reason I'm wearing it. He's seen the news, he's seen people die on the news. You know, having our kids watch the news is probably the worst thing that I can think of for any kid right now. But I'm happy to hear you say, Doug, that you do want, that you are supporting giving an option if that mandate's not there. But between now and the 20th or after that, if that mandate does go through, I ask each and every one of you to think about each kid individually. Some of these kids can wear a mask all day and they're oblivious. One of my twins, two of them are twins. One of them is completely oblivious to this entire situation. He thrived during COVID. He moved up on his IEP because that's his personality. But you've got kids like my other twin who literally have crumbled because of this. So I just ask you guys really think of everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Didn't get your name.
Lindsay Dahlheimer, Durham.
thank you all for coming tonight, and thank you for going through all of the meeting and listening to what's going on, and watching some of our students perform. I think you can see that we have quite a great collection of students throughout both in their science and in their athletics. So, with that, we have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All, second?
Second.
All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.